The HOA slapped a lien on my 150-year-old family home, and I wasn't even a member. That's how it started. One morning, a bright red paper was taped to my front door like some kind of scarlet letter. In bold letters it read, "Notice of lien. Property subject to foreclosure." My heart dropped. I live in a farmhouse that's been in my family for over a century and a half. My grandfather's grandfather built it after returning from the Civil War. Every brick, every beam, it's more than a house. It's history. It's my family's soul. And now, some HOA one I never signed up for. One I never agreed to was claiming they owned it. I tore that notice off the door and stormed across the gravel drive to my neighbor Karen's house. Yeah, that Karen, the self-appointed queen of our little street. She opened her door with that smug, tight-lipped smile. "Oh, I see you got the notice," she said, like it was a Christmas card. "What the hell is this, Karen?" I shouted. Her voice dripped with arrogance. The HOA board voted. "Your house is technically inside the boundaries of our subdivision now. So you owe us dues, plus penalties. And since you refused to pay, we placed a lien." I swear my blood boiled so hot I could feel it in my ears. I never signed anything. My house was here before your subdivision even existed. Karen smirked, folding her arms. "Doesn't matter. We control the neighborhood now. Either you pay, or you lose the house." I couldn't sleep that night. I sat at the old oak dining table, staring at that notice. My grandfather's photograph hung on the wall, his eyes, stern and proud, almost glaring at me like, "Don't you let them take what's ours." Every creak of the house reminded me of memories. My father patching the roof after a storm. My grandmother's pies cooling on the windowsill. Summers where my cousins and I would run barefoot across the fields. And now, Karen and her HOA wanted to erase all of it. I poured myself a whiskey and whispered to the empty room. They picked the wrong man. The next morning, I called the county clerk's office. I demanded answers. The clerk sighed and said, "Sir, technically, the HOA filed paperwork redefining their boundaries. And because no one objected in time, it slipped through. So they can just take my property?" The clerk lowered her voice. "Not legally, but they're trying to bully you. And if you don't fight, they might win." That's when I realized this wasn't just a mistake. This was a scheme. I started digging. Turns out Karen's son Travis was the HOA president, a slick, sharp-tongued real estate broker who thought he could modernize the area. He had this idea to flip historic homes, tear down the old charm, and build luxury townhomes. My house? The crown jewel. The biggest lot. The one everyone drove past and admired. Karen wasn't just being petty. This was about greed. That weekend, the HOA sent their security team. 2 guys in polos and sunglasses showed up in a golf cart, parking in front of my fence like they were guarding Fort Knox. One of them shouted, "Sir, you're in violation of HOA regulations. Your house doesn't meet our paint standards." I laughed. This paint was put on by my grandfather in 1965, and it's going to stay. He smirked. "Then the fines will keep stacking, and you'll lose the house even faster." Neighbors peeked through curtains. Some whispered. Some looked ashamed. Others enjoyed the drama. That night, Karen strutted down the street, handing out flyers titled, "Why the Johnson House Must Go." I'll never forget the sight of my neighbor Susan crying on her porch. She whispered, "They did this to my sister in another town. She lost her house. Be careful." I clenched my fists. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every family these power-hungry bullies had destroyed. So, I called my cousin Eddie. Now Eddie's a rough man. Ex-military, runs a Harley repair shop. He picked up the phone and said, "What's wrong, brother?" I told him everything. The lien, the threats, Karen's smug smile. He went quiet for a moment, then growled, "Sounds like it's time we remind them what real Americans do when someone tries to steal their land." The next week, the HOA held a special meeting. Karen and Travis sat at the front table with their little gavel and stacks of papers. They thought it was just going to be them talking down to me. But when I walked in, Eddie and 5 of his Harley buddies walked in behind me. The sound of their boots hitting the floor echoed like thunder. Karen's face went pale. I stood tall, holding up the lien notice. You think you can take my family's house? You think you can erase 150 years of history because you want bigger profits? Not on my watch, Travis sneered. Sir, this is a legal matter. Your intimidation tactics won't. Eddie cut him off, slamming his hands on the table. Legal? You better check the law again, son. This man isn't in your HOA. You've overstepped. You've committed fraud. And if you keep pushing, you're looking at criminal charges. The room went silent. Karen's lips trembled, but she tried to bark back. This is OUR neighborhood. We make the rules. I leaned in close, my voice steady. This house was here before your HOA, before your subdivision, before your rules. My family fought wars, built railroads, and lived through the Great Depression to keep this place standing. And I'll be damned if I let a greedy HOA steal it, the crowd murmured. Some neighbors clapped. Others looked scared. Karen pounded her little gavel, shouting, "Meeting adjourned," and stormed out. But the fight was far from over. That night I found a letter in my mailbox. No stamp, no return address. Just one sentence written in red ink, "Back off, or you'll regret it." The morning I found that red letter threat in my mailbox, I knew the HOA wasn't just playing games anymore. They were coming for me hard. I held that note under the porch light, my hands shaking. Back off or you'll regret it. It wasn't just petty harassment. It was a warning. My cousin Eddie leaned over my shoulder, saw the letter, and spat on the ground. Cowards. They're scared you're fighting back. But me? I wasn't scared. I was angry. I stood on that porch, staring out at the quiet street. Porch lights flicked on, blinds shifted. I could feel eyes watching me. The whole neighborhood knew this war was brewing, and half of them were just waiting to see if I'd fold. I clenched that note in my fist and said out loud, "They want to fight?" They just got one the very next day. I drove down to the county courthouse with a folder of documents, my deed, tax records, even the original land survey from 1870 with my great-great-grandfather's signature on it. I slammed the papers on the clerk's desk. This is proof. My house predates that HOA. They can't touch me. The clerk nodded slowly, almost nervous. Sir, you're right. But the problem is, they've filed so many false liens and complaints that your case is buried in paperwork. You'll need a lawyer. A lawyer. Just the thought made my stomach turn. I didn't have the money to throw at endless court battles. That's what the HOA was counting on. They wanted me to get tired, broke, desperate. But then I remembered something my grandfather always said. Never fight alone when the enemy has numbers. Call on your people. That night, Eddie and I sat at the kitchen table making calls. By morning, we had a small army. My old high school buddy, Frank, now a sheriff's deputy, agreed to look into the HOA's security team and their so-called authority. My cousin Lisa, a paralegal, offered to dig through county records and find every dirty trick Travis had ever pulled. Even old Mrs. Campbell down the road showed up with a shoebox full of newspaper, clippings about Karen's past projects, stories of neighbors mysteriously losing their homes. Then Travis's real estate company snatching them up cheap. Piece by piece, the puzzle was coming together. This wasn't about neighborhood standards. This was a land grab, a scam. But the HOA wasn't sitting still. 2 days later, I woke up to find bright orange spray paint across my fence. Pay your dues or get out. I heard laughter echoing down the street. A group of Karen's loyalists, lawn chairs set up on the sidewalk, sipping wine as if vandalism was their Friday entertainment. I shouted, "You think this scares me?" One of them sneered back, "Enjoy it while you can, old man. Your house won't be yours much longer." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just Karen. Half the board wanted me gone, 'cause half of them stood to profit. So I struck back the only way I knew how. With the truth, we printed flyers. Not just any flyers, copies of the original land deed, stamped and signed by the county, proving my house wasn't under HOA control. On the back, Lisa printed a list of shady property transfers tied to Travis's company. Eddie and I went door to door handing them out. Some neighbors were shocked, some embarrassed, others furious. By evening, whispers spread like wildfire. Did you hear? Karen's son is scamming us. They tried to steal the Johnson place. We might be next. The HOA thought they controlled the neighborhood with fear, but now fear was turning against them. That weekend, things exploded. The HOA called an emergency enforcement action. Translation: they marched onto my lawn with a tow truck, claiming my old Ford pickup violated their vehicle appearance policy. I stormed out, fists clenched. Touch that truck, and you'll regret it. The tow driver hesitated, clearly uneasy. But Travis barked, "Do it. This man's in violation, and the HOA will not tolerate rebels." Then sirens. Red and blue lights cut through the dusk. Frank, my sheriff buddy, stepped out of his cruiser. Hand on his belt. "What's going on here?" Karen ran up, waving her papers. "Officer, arrest him. He's refusing to comply with HOA regulations." Frank calmly took the papers, flipped through them, then smirked. "Ma'am, this lien is invalid. This man isn't part of your HOA, and this property predates your subdivision by almost a century. You touch his truck, you're committing theft." Travis's face turned beet red. "This is harassment. We'll sue." Frank leaned in, his voice low but firm. "Try it. But next time I come out here, I won't be this polite." The tow truck driver unhooked my truck and drove off without a word. The crowd watching from their porches cheered. For the first time, I wasn't standing alone, but Karen wasn't finished. That night, the crickets sang and the stars came out. My power suddenly cut off. The house went dark. I grabbed a flashlight and stormed outside. Across the street, I saw Travis, standing smugly with 2 HOA goons near the utility box. "Enjoy your candlelight, old man," he shouted. Before I could move, Eddie and his Harley crew roared down the street, engines rumbling like thunder. They circled the HOA goons, headlights blazing, tires spitting gravel. Eddie growled, "Touch that power line again, and you'll be the one needing light in a hospital bed." The goons scattered. Travis slinked away into the shadows. We reconnected the power, but I knew this wasn't over. The next day, Lisa dropped a bombshell. She dug into county records and found proof that Travis had filed forged signatures to expand the HOA's boundaries. Fake names. Dead people's names. Even one signature that matched Karen's handwriting. We had them. Eddie slapped the table so hard, the coffee cups jumped. "This is it. Fraud. Pure fraud. We take this to the DA, and they're done." But I wasn't satisfied with just exposing them. I wanted them to feel the same fear they'd tried to crush me with. So, I planned a move they'd never see coming. The HOA scheduled their annual community barbecue. Usually, it was their chance to parade around, bragging about rules and power. Everyone came, mostly out of obligation. This year, I showed up too, with Eddie, Lisa, Frank, and half the neighbors I'd won over, as Karen grabbed the microphone to start her little speech. I stepped up onto the stage. The crowd hushed. Karen stammered, You can't be here." I held up a giant poster board. On it, copies of the forged HOA boundary documents blown up for everyone to see. Red arrows circled the fake signatures. "This," I shouted, "is what your HOA has been doing. Forging records. Filing fake liens. Stealing homes? My house is just the beginning." "Who's next?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Neighbors turned on Karen and Travis like wolves. One man yelled, "That's my father's name. He's been dead 10 years. Another woman screamed, "You tried to scam me too." Karen's face drained of color. Travis tried to snatch the poster, but Eddie blocked him, towering like a wall. The crowd erupted. Shouts, anger, demands for resignation. Karen fumbled with the mic, squealing lies. All lies. But no one was listening anymore. By the time I walked off that stage, half the neighborhood was chanting, "Shut them down. Shut them down." That night, as I sat on my porch sipping a cold beer, Eddie grinned beside me. "You shook the hornet's nest, cousin." They're cornered now. And a cornered rat is the most dangerous. He was right. Because the next move the HOA made nearly destroyed everything. The HOA thought they could bleed me out in court. But they forgot one thing. This house isn't just mine. It's my family's legacy. And I'd burn every dime I had before I let them steal it. The morning after the barbecue, I got served. A man in a cheap suit walked up my driveway, shoved a thick envelope in my hands and said, "You've been sued." Inside, a lawsuit from the HOA claiming I owed $97,000 in back dues, penalties, and damages. They demanded foreclosure. I laughed out loud. $97,000? For an HOA I never signed up for? They were desperate, but my laugh turned to rage when I realized their tactic: drown me in legal fees, bury me in paperwork, and hope I'd break. Eddie slammed the lawsuit on the table. They want war? Then they'll get it. Court's just another battlefield. Lisa, my paralegal cousin, grinned. They don't know what they've started. Their documents are full of holes. I'll tear them apart. The weeks that followed were hell. Karen strutted around the neighborhood like a queen, bragging, "We'll own that farmhouse by Christmas." Travis showed up in a brand new Lexus, smirking at me like the deal was already sealed. Meanwhile, I sat at my kitchen table every night, drowning in paperwork. Motions, filings, letters from lawyers. Some nights I felt the weight crushing me, but every time I looked up at my grandfather's picture, I heard his voice in my head, "Don't back down, ever." So I didn't. The first court hearing was a circus. Karen and Travis sat at the plaintiff's table, smug in their tailored suits. Their lawyer, a slick guy with gelled hair and an expensive watch, strutted around like he already won me. I walked in with Eddie, Lisa, and Frank by my side. No suits. No ties. Just determination. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Johnson, do you have representation?" Lisa stood tall. "Your Honor, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm assisting with evidence, and the evidence will prove this case is fraudulent." The HOA's lawyer smirked. "Objection. Amateur theatrics won't save him." The judge leaned forward. "I'll allow it. Continue." Lisa handed over the first bombshell. "Your Honor, these boundary expansion documents are forgeries. Look closely. Multiple signatures are from deceased residents. Others match Mrs. Karen Anderson's handwriting exactly." The judge squinted at the papers. Travis squirmed in his seat. Karen's face went pale. Their lawyer scrambled. That's irrelevant. The board has authority, Frank." The sheriff's deputy stood and spoke. "Your Honor, as a law officer, I can confirm. Filing forged documents with the county is a criminal offense." "Not irrelevant, illegal." Courtroom buzzed with gasps. The judge banged his gavel. "Order." Then he fixed his glare on Karen and Travis. "Is this true?" Karen stuttered, I don't recall." Travis snapped, "This is all lies." But it was too late. The seed of doubt was planted. The next hearing got even uglier. The HOA doubled down, dragging out neighbors to testify against me. They claimed my old farmhouse lowered property values. They said my truck was an eyesore. One even lead, saying I hosted illegal parties. I sat there, fists clenched, while they painted me as some kind of villain. But then Lisa pulled out her ace card. She played a recording of voicemail Karen accidentally left on another neighbor's phone. Her voice screeched through the speakers. "We have to get that Johnson house. Once it's gone, Travis can sell the lot for triple. Don't worry about the law. We'll bury him in court until he gives up." The courtroom gasped. The judge's eyes widened. Karen tried to shout over it, "That's taken out of context." But the damage was done. The truth was out. By the third hearing, the tide had fully turned. Neighbors who once stayed silent now came forward, telling stories of harassment, fake fines, and intimidation. Mrs. Campbell testified that the HOA had targeted her too, trying to bully her into selling. One by one, the walls closed in on Karen and Travis. Their lawyer looked more nervous every day. Finally, the judge dropped the hammer. "This court finds the HOA acted fraudulently in filing liens against Mr. Johnson. All claims are dismissed. Furthermore, This court refers evidence of forgery and fraud to the district attorney for criminal investigation. Bang, gavel down. I'd won, but it didn't stop there. Within weeks, the DA filed charges. Karen and Travis were arrested for fraud and forgery. Local news cameras swarmed our quiet street. Neighbors who once whispered now shouted, "Justice." Eddie and I sat on the porch the night the news aired, sipping cold beers. He grinned. "Told you, cousin? Cornered rats always get trapped." I nodded, staring at my old farmhouse glowing in the sunset. They thought they could steal history, but history fought back. The aftermath was sweeter than I imagined. The HOA collapsed. The board resigned in disgrace. Neighbors voted to dissolve the entire association. Without Karen's iron fist, people started helping each other instead of fighting each other. Kids played in the streets again. Folks waved when they passed my house, and me. I didn't just keep my home. I became the symbol of standing up to bullies. One evening, a man I barely knew knocked on my door. He said, "Thank you. They were going to take my house next. You saved us." I shook his hand and replied, "No, we saved each other." The farmhouse still stands. The walls are worn, the porch creaks, but every inch of it tells my family's story. And now, it tells another story too, of justice, of defiance, of beating an entitled HOA at their own dirty game. So if you ever face a bully like Karen, remember this: they only win if you stay quiet and me. I'll be sitting right here on my porch, waiting for the next fool who thinks they can take what doesn't belong to them, because this land, this house, it's mine, and it always will be. So that's the story of how the HOA tried to steal my 150-year-old farmhouse and lost everything instead. What do you think? Have you ever dealt with an HOA or an entitled neighbor who pushed too far? Drop your story in the comments below. I read every one. And remember, never let bullies win.